Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and we have the beautiful Elizabeth here with us for today's conversation. Our opening
Hello.
song was Repeat by Anise. It's a song I found this week, and I'm like, oh, it's just such good vibes. So hopefully that song put some good energy into your spirit and your soul. It literally says, repeat after me from this moment, I am free. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. We're free from our limitations. We're free from our judgments. We're free from our expectations. And we're free to live a beautiful, purposeful life, which is the topic of today's conversation. So before I give Elizabeth a full-on intro, I wanted to give you all the etymology definition of purpose that I have been starting every session with because some of you are here every week, which I love. Welcome back for those of you who are always popping in. And some of you, you're like, oh, I'm not here for every conversation, but the ones that I come to are the ones that I just feel like are the ones that I need right now. So the etymological definition, I think that's the way that you say it, of purpose is if you break up the word and go to the actual roots of the word itself, we have per, which means to set forth beforehand, and it's used in the word pure, which means without blemish. And then we have pose, which means to suggest or intend. So if you put that all together and you form a whole entire word, that word being purpose, then really what we're looking at and what the deep etymological, I feel like that feels right, but not right. The deep root of the word is the purest intention that we set forth beforehand. So, a lot of what we're talking about during this month of living our purpose is a lot of kind of how we show up. And in interviewing our guides, what I found is that our purpose is more of a general feeling or a calling or an energy, and it's not necessarily a specific achievement or accolade, which, at least in our American culture, we are taught that our purpose is something that we achieve and strive for. But what you'll hear from over and over from our guides is that it can be more of about how you live your life, or the why in which you live your life, or maybe the who in which you are here to support or who you live alongside. So it's more of that internal journey than this external quest, which you will hear repeated. So we started off the month talking about how our purpose is wired within. We talked about the neuroscience of purpose. We dove into letting go of who you think you should be and being more in the present moment and honoring where you're at now versus maybe where you haven't been or where you want to go. Last week, we talked about before you find your purpose, find yourself. So it was all about that deep journey of what do you need right now? Who am I supposed to be right now? How do I show up in my best right here, right now? And this week with Elizabeth, we're talking about the people who shape who you become because we are very much a social species. We don't necessarily have an option or a choice in that. We were literally made to be social. It's a part of our biological construct. So that means that the people that we choose to have in our lives, or the people who come into our lives, or the people who impact our lives, or who we impact, will play a significant role. So we've got the wonderful Elizabeth here. It's her first time as a guide speaker. She's one of our new guides as well, but first time on our Motivational Monday series, which I'm so excited to have her. And a little bit about her, she spent a lot of time in the theater. So she's got a really cool theater background, which you'll hear a little bit of today. She has focused on executive leadership and HR. She's been a restaurant owner, and she is also a life guide here with Life Guides. So I'm going to drop Elizabeth's Life Guides profile in the chat. If you feel a calling to schedule a call with her and to have her be a mentor for you on your journey, you all have access to all of our guides for free, which is really beautiful through either the school you're going to or the company that you work with or a different partnership that might be happening that you're a part of. So, Elizabeth's superpower is that she brings calm and clarity to moments that feel overwhelming. She encourages you to embrace life's detours, and she'll sit with you during times of uncertainty, listen, and help you make sense of what you are experiencing without judgment. She slows down the worries, advocates for you, and helps you see your situation more clearly and helps you reconnect with your strength. So, hi, Elizabeth. We are so excited and happy to have you here for today's session and specifically talking about the people who shape our purpose. So, as we're diving into today's conversation, I feel like a great place to start is getting an understanding of why you believe relationships with others help us shape our purpose in life.
Well, I mean, gosh, here we are connected, and how lucky am I to have this opportunity? Because I'm going to be talking about how I have felt that my life purpose through the people that have come into my life has really been about the connection I feel with them. And what is that telling me? What am I hearing when I listen to what these relationships bring to me? And now, truly, as a guide, I have goosebumps as I sit here because look at me connecting with so many, and through my life recognizing that it's those connections that have really brought about even the potential for not just my purpose, not just my contentment, my moments of happiness or joy, but also what looks like a path to self-actualization. That's amazing, right? And how do we get there? And it's often, for me, been the people that have entered my life or the connections I've provided to others. Really, really neat.
I am so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited that you picked this topic of the conversation. For those of you who maybe don't know how I do the background work, I reach out to our guides and I'm like, what do you want to talk about in regards to the topic of living your purpose? And Elizabeth was like, we've got to talk about the people. We've got to talk about the people who shape us. And it really is. I feel like a lot of the times we can have a lone wolf mentality and drop 111 in the chat if you know what it's like to be a lone wolf. I have lived that in different eras of my life and now I know better. Doors open by people. And doors open through connections, and life is formed by the people who we're around. So I feel like Elizabeth, we're often looking at relationships as shaping us in positive ways, which we will 100% discuss in today's conversation. But in you and I planning for this conversation, there were so many relationships in your life that surprised you, that maybe didn't feel or seem easy, but gave you so much growth. So can we hone in on some of the ways that challenging relationships can shape us?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to start with the person that I feel like was and will continue, and I believe forevermore, be so pivotal and a through line to both, the positive and what sometimes felt like negative in my life, which is my primal relationship with my mother, right? We all, no matter what that relationship looks like, even if you never known her, right? This is a through line in all of our ourselves. And, my mother was a person who I knew deeply loved me, deeply believed in me, but I didn't always feel emotionally safe with her. Why was that? It was a struggle I had through my childhood, through young adulthood. Um, but here was this thing. She connected me and believed in me, and I knew she believed in me. And how did she connect me? Here's a little story. I was the youngest of 9 children. It's so easy to both feel lost as well as a deep understanding on how to collaborate and connect with others. There's so many great things from that position in life. But as a small child, I was constantly looking for, where do I belong? Where do I connect? What is just being the youngest? Where is that going to be good enough? And there was a day where I was just tagging along with my mom, and we were in the grocery store, and there was this little note on the community bulletin board back in the day in the 70s. And it said, that the community theater was looking for somebody who was small who could read. So from across the, supermarket, I saw this and I said to my mom, Mom, I'm small and I can read. This sense of belonging, this sense of connection. And she said, well, honey, that's called theater. Like, they want to, you have to audition and you play a part. I hadn't even yet been in school. It was like the summer before I went to kindergarten. And I auditioned for a play. And what happened? Exactly who I was exactly what was needed. It was the most amazing experience of my life. I felt connected to the people that I was collaborating with this story on the stage. It brought compassion and emotion to our community. And immediately, as a 5 year old, I felt a sense of belonging. Did I really know why? No. And how did I know how that was going to be a through line in my life of connecting to myself, recognizing that emotions are gifts, connecting to our community, allowing other people's perspectives to be seen through art? So that was sort of the basis of, at a young age, I found that feeling that exactly what I was exactly what was needed, was sort of an initial launch into listening to the people around me, making me feel that I had a sense of purpose already.
I also think that it's really beautiful that even though you felt like maybe you didn't have that emotional connection with your mom when you were younger, at the very least, she believed in you. And there was
Yes.
a level of trust of like, oh, I mean, if my daughter is reading the sign and feels like it might be something that she wants to do, then let me go do it. And sometimes I think the older generations definitely had a very different way of showing their
Yes.
affection. So a lot of the times I feel like sometimes we see it in support of our pursuits, which not everyone gets to, but that can absolutely change the entire trajectory of your life. A parent saying, yes, you can do it, or a parent saying, no, you can't do the arts. You'll never make money doing that. What
Right.
5-year-old cares about money? They just want to express themselves, you know?
Right. And when you think about something like that, you listen, right? Listen, is somebody's reflection back to you something that's trying to control you or trying to connect with you? Are they trying to demean you or are they trying to develop you? And it's up to you to sort of listen and decide, what am I getting from both the most safe and comfy relationships, or what are you getting from the ones that challenge you, and how are you going to behave through them? Are you going to work through what truly are virtuous behaviors, things like a belief in yourself, your temperance? Like, are you going to think through in a very intentional way, how are you going to handle this challenge? Are you going to allow yourself to be a bit stoic, which means you're just going to think a little bit intentionally about how you're going to react to whatever challenge is coming your way through a relationship? And if we skip forward a little bit in my life, not only did I have my parents who believed in me and knew I would make my way in the world somehow, right? They believed and they saw that spark in me with the arts. When I got into college and I was a theater major, the head of my department, he was tough. He was a temper that you had to really learn how to work with, but I knew he somehow believed in me and he was worth the challenge of learning how to work with. He taught me discipline. He taught me that discipline actually is one of the steps towards manifesting what you really want, right? You can't just lay on your pillow and think you want it. You also have to be intentional and disciplined. And these are virtuous behaviors. And, when it was time for me to move on from college, she said, there's more for you out there. You want this? I want you to get to New York City. I want you to try to get into the big leagues, continue your education, get into an Ivy League, right into the New York City. This kid from Indiana, me, 22 years old, he said, you've got this, go. Why? Because for the 4 years prior, he took me under his wing and said, you can accept my challenge. You've got the ability to be disciplined. And in the end, it's going to manifest more for you. But some people were afraid of this guy. But in the end, what a change he made in my life, because I did go on to get to New York and get into a big deal. I manifested a life in the arts for myself. Why? It connected me to people and it had a belief in myself. It connected me to myself. And that's where I met my first mentor, who to this day, it's been a 35-year journey. To this day, she will check in with me. And the belief she had in me, the wanting me to have a bright future, to know that it can't just stop with her and what she was doing in the industry of theater. She knew it was up to her to bring up the next generation, and she gave that to me. And to this, and I thought, how can I, even in the moment, I didn't know how would I pass that on. But ultimately, I did, through entrepreneurship. I had the guts, the confidence, through all of these things these people were showing me, right? So being an entrepreneur, was it about the product, about the pizza or the wine I was selling? Sometimes, but a lot of times it was just community connection. It was a place for people to be, decompress, talk. I gave so many people their first job. Like, what a wonderful thing to provide a good culture for them and show them what it can feel like to be a part of a collaborative process when you're supported. Like, that's amazing. In the end, it wasn't about what did the cash register say. It said, how did I feel at the end of the day? Who did I connect with? Those were great times.
Oh, this is reminding me so much of it's so fun watching the journey because you do go from mentee to mentor. You do go from learning to teaching. And it's one of the reasons why I even sought out Life Guides. And I was like, oh, this is a place that I want to work at because I've been a mentor for a very long time. I've also been mentored for a very long time. And there's something that happens And I'm going to caveat this ever so slightly. Next month, we're talking about professional relationships, and we are going to have a conversation specifically in the difference between AI and human connection and where human connection is still incredibly important in an AI world. Because, you know, your mentors, and I'm sure your mentor that you had in college, Elizabeth, he saw something in you that I'm sure that you hadn't glimpsed within yourself yet.
Exactly. Exactly.
And he had taken that time to bring that out of you over 4 years and had shaped and molded you in a way that that path it would very likely have not been open to you should this person have not seen what lived inside of you before you could ever see it in yourself. And that's the beauty of mentorship. That's the beauty of support is people can see your greatness and what you're on the precipice of before usually you can. Sometimes we're too close to the mirror to zoom out and see how amazing we are.
Yeah, and I guarantee you that my mentors had incredible mentorship in their life. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe there was a lack and it's something that they want to make sure they give others. You know, when I talk about did I always feel emotionally safe with my mom? No. But there's a great journey there where in the end I absolutely did. It was great healing for me to care for her as she aged. But going back to, feeling safe and wanting to give, and you don't feel that way and you want to give that to others. That's been part of my journey of why I want to mentor, to guide, to connect, to support, be a warm blanket, advocate, help you bring your best self, because I always wanted that for myself. I didn't want to feel alone. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to say I wanted to give up sometimes and just have somebody remind me that it's just been a bad day. It's not a bad idea, you
Mm,
know, right? And what is it still worth it to you, right? And I've had other challenging relationships that ultimately end up so beautiful and kind of priming me for just solidly beautiful relationships. What As you learn, who do you want to be around, what kinds of things have taught you, the types of people that help you be your best self, and I love employing the idea and the concept of anger. You might feel angry about something, someone, a situation. Allowing yourself to start to have some empathy for yourself. Where is that anger coming from? Empathy for the person that maybe is providing that angry energy. Where is that coming from? Who are we if we don't live life with empathy, right? So if you're in an angry state over a challenging relationship, if you can drop into that empathetic mode, ultimately, I found I resulted in a place of compassion. You know, my first husband, but let's more call him my co parent, my business partner, my sense of family. We've been, as what we call, in collaboration over 30 years. Did we have some shocking moments that showed us we were growing in different directions that sometimes felt hurtful? But did we really care for each other, or were we going to stop a change that obviously needed to happen? We're going to keep caring about each other and all of the things that were good inside of it? Absolutely. And did he, in the end, provide such a sense of family to me that I needed so deeply, even in our strife? And it went from anger to empathy. What's going on here for both of us? To compassion, right? Let's allow each other to change and grow, but let's not throw away what's good. And you can employ this stuff in all relationships, right? I've talked about primal relationships like our mothers, our nuclear families, people outside of our lives that come to our lives, like the head of my department, my mentor, right? Meeting a first husband who ultimately represents somebody who helped you grow up, helped you change, helped you become more of yourself because you learned to forgive. Why? Because you want to be forgived. It's incredible. And then, I talk in my bio, on my profile on Life Guides about the journey with my mother, right? We talked about that in the beginning. What a dynamic woman she was. So bright, so creative, also intense and scary. And when she was, she was widowed twice in her life. She had challenges that maybe she didn't want to talk about, that maybe sometimes came out as anger. But before she became very ill with dementia, I was really struggling with one of my sons. And let me talk about children as connections. Like we could talk about that forever, but children, you're not just having a baby, you're having a human who's going to have their own free will, and they are not you. And once again, are you trying to control or are you trying to connect? Right? And I would call my mom and I would talk to her about the struggles I was having with him. And before she got too ill to really talk this way, one day she said, "Why don't you just let Joey be Joey?" And I thought to myself, maybe that's what my mom's always wanted, just to be herself. Maybe that's where the anger's coming from. Maybe that's what I always wanted, and I didn't think she would understand. Right? And then as the years went by and she became sick with dementia, here I am, the youngest of 9 children, not feeling like the other children will support her in this journey. Like many of you out there, you feel like you're the one person in your family who's going to end up kind of holding that emotional bag. You're going to be doing the physical stuff, right? I was so afraid of it. I was so angry knowing this was coming my way. What was it going to be like having to care for her in those really dark moments of like what was going to happen to her? I was so afraid. But listen, like this is amazing. 20 years after my first marriage, I get married again. And this man, he's such a dear person who empowered me to say, this is the right thing to care for your mom. We are bringing her into our home. We weren't even married a year. And I said, I'm afraid, I'm angry. Why me? She's a little bit scary sometimes. I don't know where this is going to go. And he said, but it's the right thing. And over the course of the 2 years that I cared for her in our home, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, coordinating all of her care, making it peaceful for her, she softened. We connected. I saw her. I really saw her. Her chips were down and her defenses were down. And she managed to, I looked at this strong, independent, smart woman who had to deal with her own problems, her own diminishing life with humility, with acceptance. She wasn't angry with me. Her care team loved her. They loved our relationship. It was so healing to have others reflect on what we were doing for each other in this end moment of life, right? And truly, right towards the end, I don't even know if it was 30 hours before she ultimately passed, she said to me, "How did I get so lucky?" And I thought to myself, how did I get so lucky to have had this opportunity for these 2 years to just be centered together, listen, think about what this relationship was truly meant to be. And I just responded to her. I said, "I don't know, Mom, but I think it's exactly the way it was supposed to be."
Hmm.
I've met people now through life guides who've had no ability to know their mom, and that's a lost wonder for themselves. Or they've got a 90-year-old mom and it's only been the last couple of years where they've been able to connect. And I think to myself, how great is it that these people live this long life to ultimately realize something like that, right? So, as I think about these things, I just want to encourage people to know that whether it's a relationship that's more like a soul tie, a string, that string theory, we're all connected. Is it somebody who's always been a part of us, a child, a mother, a best friend? Maybe that spouse really was meant to be your brother. I mean, there's love in different ways when you connect. And it's true in your professional relationships too. What are people struggling with? Why is it hard to manage them? Why are you having trouble managing others? Like, let's talk about it. What's the human experience really going on as far as like what you're struggling with? And what are we going to learn from it? And are we going to act virtuously with intention, thought, pride, compassion? Or are we going to let a vice get to us, something that sort of suffocates it or doesn't let it breathe and doesn't allow that emotion to be a gift. Which way are we going to go? And I've just found so much peace when I've recognized my connection with others, the service to others brings about purpose. And now I get to talk and mentor and encourage. Like, what a gift.
And we are so happy to have you. I mean, I think living life with your heart wide open is something that can be very scary for people
Yep.
because be having this breadth of life and this breadth of connection means that you've been vulnerable. It means that you've been open. It means that you've had to challenge your own mindset and you've had to view things differently and see, wow, maybe this is challenging, but how is this supportive to me? How am I going to grow here? So I thank you so much for not only living life wide open, but for being so open and so articulate in your ability to share your stories. And then even beyond that, for being a guide that our members can go to and be like, wow, I have this relationship. Maybe how can I look at it differently? Or I'm trying to control this relationship in this way, but how do I foster that sense of connection even more? So we have just a couple of minutes left until I have to close us out. And I'm curious if you have any final words regarding the people who shape who we become, or maybe us being the person who helps others shape who they become.
Yeah, I just want to, bring about the concept, sort of a happy rumination for the day on what are those positive people who have shown us the light and brought about levity and joy and happiness. But what are the people who, we're struggling with and why? If we connect with them in a virtuous way, where does that bring, do we get closer to contentment? I think so. Can we then have moments of pure joy and happiness? Because we know that's not a state we live in forever. It's really about being content, right? Happy and knowing there's always more for us out there. I just want to have the thought for the day of being, if I really listen to my connections from birth till now and what the future brings, can I get more to a self actualized state? What does that look like? you know and the definition of that just being at your highest purpose, your highest level.
Hmm. So beautiful. So Elizabeth is also going to be with us next month talking about professional relationships, and we'll be diving deeper. I know she gave us a little teeny tiny seed during this conversation, but we will be taking a little bit of a deeper dive into professional relationships as well. So we have one more Motivational Monday this month for living your purpose, and that is with Carolyn next week talking about finding a new purpose after extraordinary change. So, the times in our lives where maybe we lose someone or we shake up our entire lives and move to a new place or have a child or something else along those lines, those change who we are and how do we find our purpose beyond that. So, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here and for sharing your insight, for sharing your vulnerability, and for helping us see the different ways that relationships can shape us. I feel like we live in a very connected world through technology, but I feel like more than ever, people are feeling disconnected. So, to ensure that we had a conversation around relationships in this month while talking about living your purpose was so important. For those of you who are here, there's a survey that pops up at the end. If you'd like to leave any love letters, tell us how today's session went. We always look at them immediately after, and it's so fun to read them. So we are so grateful to have you here. Thank you all so much. We hope that you continue with that happy rumination thought that Elizabeth left for us. Who are the positive people who have shown us the light? And who are the people that we're struggling with and why? And how can we bring that into more of a virtuous light and a virtuous energy as we navigate our lives? I'm going to drop Elizabeth's profile in the chat one last time. This is a beautiful woman that you can schedule a call with, and she can help you navigate these relationships that shape who we become. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, wanting the best for everyone today. Have a great one.
Bye, everyone.